Odette Wilkens is the president and general counsel of Wired Broadband, Inc. It's a nonprofit focusing on safe technology for the public. She's been a technology attorney for over 20 years, having represented a number of multinational corporations in technology transactions. Odette graduated from Brooklyn Law School, holds an MBA in finance from the Stern Graduate School of Business at NYU, and a BA from Barnard College, which is affiliated with Columbia University. Recently, Odette has been spearheading the grassroots opposition to those giant wireless towers that are being installed all over New York City. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Odette Wilkens.
Thank you very much, Doug. Yes, I'm a technology attorney, so I understand the benefits of technology, but I also understand the risks. And we have a situation now in New York City which is quite anomalous from the cell tower installations in other parts of the country. There are thousands of 4G, 5G cell towers being proposed on the streets of New York City, and some have already been installed. These can be as close as 10.6 feet to a structure. That means one's home, business, or school. This is through a contract entered into between the city and its vendor, CityBridge. There's been growing opposition among New York City residents, and in several areas, overwhelming opposition. The big question is, why was there no community input before signing the contract? And so this is what our 5G cell towers look like. As you can tell, they are quite large. They are 3 stories high, 32 feet high. And the middle slide will give you a sense of the scale. As you can see, it's quite large. And on the left, it is quite close to the building. The 2 pictures on the far left and on the far right were taken from the presentation from the city. And the picture in the middle is compliments of New Yorkers for Wired Tech, which has been very involved in spearheading the effort in New York City. So as you can see, they're very close to buildings. And in the far left picture, you will see a pole top where they're placing the 5G, 4G antennas on the top of a light pole. Now, this is what the inside of one of these poles looks like. On the left, you'll see that there are 5 bays. The first, and if you see on the right, there's a diagram that tells you what each bay is going to contain. The first 2 top bays will be high millimeter waves from 5G service. The third and fourth is going to be 4G LTE, and the 5th one is going to be Wi-Fi, and that's supposed to be providing free Wi-Fi to the public. Now, the city did undergo an environmental review. New York City is required to do an environmental review on these mobile installations. They did, except that they piggybacked off the previous Link NYC kiosks, which were only 9.5 feet tall. And they said that there was going to be no significant impact on energy consumption. So that was an incorrect assumption. And 5G is very power hungry, and it can consume 3 to 4 times the energy that's otherwise required for 4G, and maybe up to 61 times by certain reports by 2030. So size is very important here. And so as opposed to calling them Link 5G kiosks, they really should be called cell towers. The Public Design Commission had heard a presentation from the city, and the lead agency is the Office of Technology and Innovation. I'm going to call them OTI, or Office of Technology for short. The Public Design Commission approved a pilot program of about 200 Link 5G cell towers in order to get community input. Now, the input has been tremendous opposition from community boards, as I indicated before. And there's also been opposition from government officials, where, for instance, the borough president of Manhattan said that the city should really slow down and really take a breather and take another look at the aesthetics and other factors with respect to the cell towers, and other government officials have joined as well. There's also been tremendous opposition by historical preservation organizations, and there's now a coalition of them in New York City. The problem is that the city has been trying to place these in historic districts where they really don't belong. So there's been a tremendous amount of opposition. So in terms of a pilot program to determine whether this is actually going to pan out as a proof of concept, it has certainly failed. Not only do we have the 4G, 5G cell towers, we also have the 4G, 5G small cells, and they are being placed on utility poles. Now, they are already on existing utility poles. We have over 7,000 in New York City installed. About 3,000 additional ones are approved, and another 3,000 are being proposed. So why do we need these Link 5G cell towers? Another part of the wireless infrastructure are these pole tops. And this is the view of from a third floor apartment. This is right outside the window of a baby's bedroom, and it's less than 10 feet. Then we also have the rooftop antennas. Now look at this, and it looks like an antenna farm on top of a building on Lexington Avenue in New York City. So the city wants to build out these cell towers in order to really build out the wireless infrastructure. The problem is that we already have a lot of coverage and people aren't getting dropped calls. And so the need for this kind of service has not been proven. We have filed a number of FOIL requests. That's the Freedom of Information Law requests in New York if you want to get information from the government. But there's been no transparency. We have filed these FOILs as far back as 2021, and more currently in January of 2023. We still have not gotten any answers. And these are very fundamental questions. What are the antennas that are going to be using? The model number, the manufacturer. How about the frequency bands, the power potential, and the electrical and engineering drawings? There must be those drawings. Visual impact studies, FCC compliance reports, which indicates whether they're compliant with the radio frequency emission limits from the FCC. Where are the gaps in service? Where are the propagation maps? Where are the drive-by tests? Where are the permits and authorizations? And are there any denial of service reports? We have received no responses and just perpetual extensions. Environmental Health Trust has been very wonderful in providing support for us here in New York City. And a special call out to Theodora Scarrato, who's Executive Director of Environmental Health Trust, who has been absolutely tireless in helping us in our efforts in New York City. Environmental Health Trust posed two very important questions that they posed directly to the Office of Technology. If you're saying that there is a tremendous number of people in New York City who are lacking service or who are underserved, then why are they underserved? Is it because they cannot afford it, or is it due to a lack of infrastructure? The Office of Technology has estimated about 3.4 million people who are underserved, but it's not clear as to why they're underserved. And also, how do we know that the wireless services will actually connect the unconnected? These are fundamental questions, and Environmental Health Trust has still not received any answers to their questions. Now, the Office of Technology has justified coming into our neighborhoods with these 5G giant cell towers by saying that the telecom carriers say that they need added capacity for future demand. Now, as we heard from Andrew Campanelli in the XNet versus Village of Flower Hill decision, the judge specifically said that added capacity for future demand is not supported by the Telecommunications Act. And that means that there's no federal preemption and then there's no federal imprimatur to come into neighborhoods that do not need them and do not want them. And also the telecoms are saying, they said that the telecoms are saying that there are gaps in service. Well, those gaps were requested. We requested records of those gaps. Community boards have requested records of those gaps in service. There were no records to produce. And under federal law in New York, they are required to provide evidence of a gap in service. So the question is, why is it that the city has entered into contracts where there hasn't been proven record of a gap in service? The other issue that comes up a lot is, oh, we need this for digital equity. We need this because people need Wi-Fi. Well, the Wi-Fi is mostly going to be on the streets, and only if you, I guess, subscribe to their services to 5G and 4G will you have services in wireless connections in your home, but you still would have to buy a 5G phone. Now, according to the US Government Accountability Office, 5G is unlikely to remedy the digital divide. And as a matter of fact, may even exacerbate it. The National Digital Inclusion Alliance testified in Congress, and they said that if this is supposed to serve the underserved, well, they're also low income, and who's going to be able to afford a 5G phone? In addition, there have been reports of devaluation of property values to areas close to cell towers, up to 20%. In addition, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has prohibited the Federal Housing Administration from providing any mortgage to homes that are within a fall zone. So guess what? 10.6 feet to a structure is within the fall zone. So it's not clear how lower property values are going to enhance social welfare in these digital equity districts. The other issue is that comes up a lot in community boards is 5G safe? Is wireless radiation safe? Can we have this so close to our homes and our windows? Well, the answer that we get from the city is that the carriers comply with the FCC emission limits. Well, that's very interesting because what it does is the Federal Telecommunications Act says that you cannot bring any claim for environmental or health harms if the carriers are within the emission limits. So this basically is a safe harbor for industry. It immunizes industry from liability for personal harm. Is it set for safety for the public? Well, the FCC was sued by the Environmental Health Trust and the Children's Health Defense, and the court specifically ruled against the FCC and the FCC's limits because it said that the FCC's refusal to review 11,000 pages of scientific studies showing harm below its limits was arbitrary and capricious. So the court sent back the FCC's outdated 1996 limits. They were remanded back to the FCC for further consideration. In terms of adverse health and environmental impacts, this comes up a lot in the community boards around the city. First of all, there's been no pre-market testing of 5G, and that was established by Senator Blumenthal when he questioned the telecom industry, and they confirmed that they were not aware of any pre-market testing, and so he said, we're flying blind here as far as health and safety is concerned. The World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer classified wireless radiation as a possible human carcinogen back in 2011. And there are many scientists now who are calling it either a probable human carcinogen or a carcinogen. In New Hampshire, they formed a commission in order to study 5G and wireless radiation, and they found harm below the FCC limits. Now, the depth of RF radiation or radiofrequency radiation absorption in children is very high. As you can see from this study, on the left, a 5-year-old child, this is looking on top of a child's head or a person's head. So for a 5-year-old child, the radiation penetrates through their skull much more substantially than for a 10-year-old child or an adult. And therefore, it really shouldn't be near children or near schools or even near people, for other adults for that matter. And wireless radiation is being characterized as a pollutant by the telecoms. If you look at your mobile protection device policy, it will list wireless radiation or radiofrequency radiation or electromagnetic radiation as a pollutant. And therefore, personal injury is disclaimed. And for the most part, insurance companies, actually the standard for insurance companies is that there is a pollution exclusion in their policies, and that includes wireless radiation. And as Scott McCullough said, you need to get the telecom companies to require from the telecom companies a pollution exclusion waiver from their insurance companies. And that is the end of my presentation, so I'm happy to answer any questions.